In a recent political debate on Spanish television, we witnessed the spectacle of one politician from Valencia arguing that Valencian is not Catalan, and two politicians from Catalonia on this side of the border arguing that Valencian is indeed Catalan, and saying scientifically they are the same language. And the Valencian politician saying, no, not at all, it is not the same language. Now, what's happening there in social linguistics would be described, I think, as a classical case of language loyalty. It doesn't matter to what extent science can prove one thing or another, that is, linguistic science. What people think about what they do in language is part of what we have to study, is part of what we have to recognize. We saw this, if you remember, looking at Trudgill, who studied not only what people do with variants when they're speaking, but also what they say they do. We had the women over-reporting and the men under-reporting. And that self-report data will tell us things about language, things about what people think about what they're doing and what they're likely to do, which direction they're going to go in, what their motivations are. The case of language loyalty is, I think, another level of self-report data. Now, the term language loyalty here means something rather more specific than just being loyal to a language. That is, speaking Catalan or Spanish or Australian English just because you like it and you feel you should. It has been used in that way. It has been used in social linguistics and in general ideological linguistics as a loose term, being loyal to a language, being loyal to the speech community, manifesting you're part of that linguistic community. However, if we go back to the beginnings of the term, we find that it does have that more specific sense of referring to languages in contact, as indeed is the title of Uriel Weinreich, I don't know, of his book published in 1953 called Languages in Contact, where he discusses language loyalty as something that happens on the border when speakers do have an option of going one way or the other, of speaking one variety or another. Weinreich likens language loyalty to nationalism. He says it's nationalism in language, or language loyalty is to language what nationalism is to nationality. Not just being it, but being actively in favor of something. And it's not altogether a positive thing when seen in that light. In 1966, however, Joshua Fishman published a book on language loyalty in the United States, where language loyalty was seen as being one of the ways in which minority languages survived within the American dominance of English. And Fishman's focus of interest there was Yiddish. Language loyalty there can be seen as something good. It's maintaining a minority language in the face of the oppression of the majority. Weinreich, though, had a rather specific notion. His idea was that one social group on one side of the border, here Valencia, Catalonia, but there are many others, thinks that it is not inferior to the other group, but for one reason or another, be it the fact that Catalan television enters into Valencia, and publications do as well, and newspapers. For one reason or another, some of its domains are ceded to the other language, or what is perceived as the other language, the other variety. That is, it thinks it should be superior or equal, but is not. And the consequence is an active affirmation of their linguistic difference. We are not speaking a variety of Catalan, we are speaking Valencian. And in fact, as a solution that I rather like, the Language Institute in Valencia does not name the language. It's l'Institut de la Lengua. And we don't say which language it is the institute of. An elegant solution to a very difficult problem. The question of language loyalty was also picked up by John Gumpertz in actually an encyclopedia article written in 1968. So we're looking about classical concerns of basically American social linguistics. And Gumpertz focuses on a series of situations where language loyalty in this sense is occurring. Was occurring then and to some extent still does now. For example, in the subcontinent, South Asia, Hindi and Urdu are to a large extent the same language scientifically. What does scientifically mean? You know, describe the syntax. For that matter, we could argue that Catalan and Spanish share a great body of syntax, and that is science too. So, you know, there's no real science. It depends how far you want to go before you say two things are the same. What's for sure, though, is that the speakers identify their language as Hindi or Urdu, and they affirm this difference socially, institutionally, by adopting different scripts. They are written differently, they look different, so they must be different, even though the syntax is certainly comparable. Serbo-Croat or Serbian and Croatian, a very similar situation. Two languages very close to each other, possibly the same language, scientifically, whatever science is, are different because they're identified as such and they use different scripts. Other cases are the villages along the border between Holland or the Netherlands and Germany, where people say they speak Dutch and the others say they speak German, but they can have a conversation and understand each other perfectly well because they're speaking varieties that are on the border of what was and scientifically is a continuum. Other cases, counter cases of language loyalty, are given where you have speakers of Cantonese and Mandarin, that is, two varieties of Chinese, say they speak the same language, say they speak Chinese, because their loyalty is to be the same, but, we are told, have genuine difficulty understanding each other in a conversation. Mutual intelligibility is not there. So, language loyalty can be affirming a difference, but it can also be to affirm a similitude that, on the basis of the evidence, is not always there. That is, underreporting and overreporting. I rather like the promise made by a Valencian sociolinguist, Niñoles, who said in his book, citing Weinreich, yes, there is this difference in power, and so we are loyal to the minority, the oppressed. But when the power differential disappears, when we have true equality in fully democratic Spain, perhaps, so too will language loyalty. By the looks of what happened on television the other night, we're still waiting for that promise to come good.